You're not talking about national.
It will take more.
That one thing you said when you get new land.
New land, new problems,
In
yes.
Mexico, it's
New
gonna
land,
create
same
more than the
problem.
problem we had in the
New land, yeah, same problem. New version of the same problem.
freed slave, and it was causing a balance.
So, Ralph Waldo Emerson, we've seen this name before. What is he? Who is he? No, this is not a Calhoun-esque argument like last week, which says we can't take Mexico because there's Mexicans there. That's not what he's saying. But we've seen Emerson before. Who is Emerson? I know. God forbid. This is why Saturdays are important, because God forbid you remember something from a week and a half ago. Yes.
Wasn't he part of Congress?
No political. Yes. He's a philosopher of what kind of philosophy? Transcendentalism. Oh yeah, that guy. The weird people, the Michael Bushes of the world. Yes. So the Transcendentalists, keep in mind, they're all about individual fulfillment, not priding yourself on material success, on challenging the existing structures that society has put on things. So Transcendentalists, of course, in general, they're going to be anti-slavery because they believe in the independence of each one's mind and everybody's their own progress. Very Michael Bush perspectives. So, what is he saying? Chavez, what do you think? What is he saying about the Mexican-American War?
Well, I mean, it's pretty straightforward that if they get Mexico, like you said, new land same problem.
Okay, so it's a land perspective. It's about this. What issue? What's the problem?
The whole balance to free and safe state.
Okay, so there's this slave issue. Absolutely.
Also,
Good.
From the home after I added California to the Union, there was no more balance.
Sure. Do you think he's really worried about balance? If he's a really high-minded philosophic thinker, is he worried about balance in the Senate?
No, it's like he's worried about if they add Mexico or they acquire the land in Mexico, that the South will continue to want to expand slavery.
Okay, sure.
He doesn't say that.
Good. Good. Chavez, you said what else? You said you were almost to another point. I'll cut you off.
but evidence already that's actually the evidence the Mexicans already.
So Emerson's real problem is he thinks the war itself is immoral. He thinks it's against principles of humanity to fight another country for land. Like, is he opposed to spreading out westward? No. But doing so peacefully, doing so by acquiring territory through purchase, through treaty, and that by going to fight a full war against another country, an existing country, a country that created their own principles and the Mexican independence, is immoral and wrong.
Did we read that?
We did. We did read that. Who's the other transcendentalist I asked you to be aware of? I know, see? God, it was so long ago.
Oh,
The tail end of period 4. Oh, so far in the rearview mirror. Ilium has it. Let me pull out this chicken. Is that all the things we've done so far? Some.
You haven't given us our binder.
No, I don't have to give you, you take your binders back.
Oh.
Are they in the grade book yet?
No.
oh.
Then take the binders.
Are they free?
Did you take your grades?
Should I get it?
Not right now.
They stress me out at home.
They're all A's. So
Everything is. The other transcendentalist, and this is again more motivation for you to come on Saturdays and Thursdays, is Henry David Thoreau. Henry David Thoreau. And Henry David Thoreau, as an example of this mindset, Henry David Thoreau refuses to pay taxes to support the Mexican war effort because he thinks the war is immoral. He refuses to pay taxes because he says, why should my money go support this effort to conquer another country I don't believe we should be doing in the first place? He doesn't pay taxes, he goes to jail for it. Because he's so anti-Mexican War. He publishes a book or a journal titled Civil Disobedience, which argues that when you disagree with what your government is doing, you have a moral obligation to disobey that government. Civil disobedience comes off this Mexican-American War, and it becomes one of the key foundational texts that influences, for example, Gandhi. Influences, for example, Martin Luther King Jr. So it's important that we understand this Mexican War is a really divisive thing in American society, and not just necessarily for the slavery issue, but just this issue of fighting a neighboring country because you want what they have. Especially when we add the real motivation of doing so to spread more slavery. So yes, Emerson agrees with what you guys have to say, that how does poison kill somebody?
Slowly.
Yeah, from the inside. So by acquiring Mexican land, America will die from the inside. Which I think bodes nicely for our conversation going forward about the rest of Period 5. That it's not any external forces that are going to, and it's a good conversation for 2018 America. It's not external forces that will ever topple America. It's forces within our own country. It's our own problems from within that end up causing America the most problems. So Emerson is anti-Mexican War for that reason. We talked about why Calhoun was anti-Mexican War for other reasons on Thursday. Yeah, racism, but also he's worried about slavery. The quote that was in your homework last week said, eventually the Mexican War will mean an end to our institutions. When Calhoun says our institutions, what is he referring to? Slavery. That by spreading out, by asking for more land, to your point, new land, same problems. You're asking people to get fired up about slavery again. Now, up to this point, could we ignore slavery as a nationwide political problem? Up to this point. Have we been ignoring slavery? Yeah, why? What two things allowed us to ignore slavery? Before that. Be specific. See, this is you guys talking vagueness again. What? What? Be more specific. The Missouri Compromise, which said we can ignore slavery nationwide because we got a line. And the gag rule. So as social pressures start asking Congress to renegotiate the slavery conversation, Congress can say, no, we can't talk about that. We have this rule that says we can't discuss slavery in the Senate. So all of that's going to crumble away today, basically. From some positive factors, some negative factors that allow society to come to a place where slavery is not just an issue, but in the 1850s, slavery will be the social issue, the political issue. Even we'll talk about this on Thursday, the judicial issue that needs to be decided, which then eventually ends in the Civil War. So today we'll discuss about this idea of legislating sectionalism. Christoph, what does it mean to legislate? What is legislation? What does the legislative branch do? Talk to me. They make laws. So we're going to, as a nation, we're going to make laws that create sectionalism. Has sectionalism been present in American society all along? Absolutely. But now we're going to pass some specific laws that allow sectionalism to increase. Specifically the Compromise of 1850, and we'll end today with the Kansas-Nebraska Act. In my opinion, one of the dumbest things in American political history. But we'll get there. You'll know why. Prompt is here. Dan, you read first, please?
Evaluate the extent to which compromise solved the nation's sectional tensions from 1783 to 1850.
Cool. So how much have these compromises solved our problems? What's the compromise I'm referring to when I'm talking about 1783?
Missouri Compromise.
No. When is the Missouri Compromise? 1820. So what's an earlier compromise that dealt with slavery?
The Northwest Northern.
No, not quite.
It was the one that.
I heard it.
20 years.
What's the earliest compromise we make on slavery?
Oh, where we decided not to talk about slavery.
No. There it is. Louder.
3/5.
The 3/5 compromise.
Oh.
See? So we have the 3/5 compromise in here. We have the slave trade compromise in here. We have the Missouri compromise in here. And we have the compromise of 1850 in here. Those are all probably things that we should have in our minds when we think about this problem. So let's get going. Election of 1848. The map is up here. This map, again, I can teach a whole class happily with just election maps, but you guys would be lost and confused, and I'd be really happy, but I'm always pretty happy. So election 1848, we have Zachary Taylor running as a Whig. He is a proud slave owner. He is a hero of the Mexican-American War, and he is taking on this Whig mantra from people like Henry Clay, people like William Henry Harrison. And he's running on this platform of the Whig platform, strong national government, loose interpretation, pro-business as a Whig. We have Lewis Cass running as a Democrat. And finally, our man, Martin Van Buren, is back. Keep in mind, he was president, elected in 1836 post-Jackson, president for one term. He's not re-elected because of the Panic of 1837 and the fact that he's not Jackson. He's the one defeated by William Henry Harrison in that log cabin hard cider campaign. He runs again in 44 and loses as a Democrat to Polk, pre-Mexican-American War. And now he's running in 1848 as an FSP. What is FSP?
Free soil.
The Free Soil Party. Take a minute with your partner. Take a look at this election map. We have the Whigs are in light purple, the Democrats are in blue. Take a minute. What does this map reveal about American politics in 1848? Chat about it and answer questions. Let's go.
That it wasn't. Okay. Oh. Good point.
That's important. Free soil is pretty important in this conversation.
It revealed that politics during this time weren't sectional like I was before between North and South. Right now, both political parties are supported in both the North and South.
I don't see any white.
What?
I don't see white.
That's okay. You don't need to. He doesn't win any states. That's why.
Oh, so they're saying that they're trying.
Brand new little party. 5 seconds.
Full slavery. Full slavery. Working slavery.
So, Elion, let me ask you something. Do we see support for the Democratic Party spread throughout the country? Yeah. So can you say the Democratic Party still appeals to the whole nation?
Yeah.
How about the Whigs?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, they got support up north, they got support in the west, support in the south. So, because this is going to happen in the 1850s, this is going to evolve. So for now, our two main political parties are still appealing to a broad portion of the nation. Reasonable? So then, what is up with this FSP situation? Talk to me.
Since they're like, they're not really, they don't have a long time being established.
They're brand new, agreed. Brett, what does this new party stand for? The Free Soil ideology, what is it?
Gives the right of states to terminate slavery.
No, that's popular sovereignty, that's labor. Beautiful. That's it. So the Free Soil ideology says, yes, Texas, you already have slaves. Cool. We'll leave you alone. But the rest of this territory should be closed to slavery. Are they anti-slavery? No. No, no, no. Anti-expansion of slavery. And it's not because they believe that the slaves are so mistreated and life is so hard for a slave. And it's because they selfishly want this land available for the everyday small yeoman farmers. And they know that if slavery spreads out, the plantation system spreads out with it, they gobble up all the big chunks of land that are left for the everyday kind of people. David Wilmot, for example, from the Wilmot Proviso, that's a free soil document of slave. Yeah, we know we fought the war. Slavery's in Texas. Slavery's where it is. Y'all are fine. But let's ensure that the rest of the territories are made available for the everyday kind of people who don't own 100 slaves. So they don't have to compete with slave owners in a plantation economy, but instead spread out a yeomanry farming type of situation. So, does Van Buren win any states? No. But he gets 10% of the vote. Is that a little bit worrisome for the South? It should be. I agree. This little new third party runs Martin Van Buren on this free soil ideology, and 10% of America votes for him. So 10% of America, with their vote, demonstrates that they are openly hostile to the expansion of slavery. 10%. Interesting. So for the South, this is a little bit concerning. Because there's this national election, and 10% of America, where do you think those 10% votes came from? The South? Yeah, the North and the West. This chunk of land here of people that want to spread out but don't want to compete with slavery to do so. Interesting. So keep that in mind as we talk about the parties fracturing, the parties splitting up over the issue of expansion of slavery. Nobody's trying to mess with slavery where it exists. Even when Lincoln is elected in 1860 and the South secedes, Lincoln's inaugural address says, "I have no power or intention to mess with slavery where it is." All right. So, of course, right after Mexico gives up all this land, the Mexican cession, via the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, right after gold is found in California. Gold is struck. It is found at Sutter's Mill, which is inland from San Francisco in the western Sierra Nevada mountains, which leads to a massive migration to California. Massive migration. Mostly, of course, in Northern California. These people are all landing in San Francisco Harbor, the city of San Francisco itself. Who's been to San Francisco? Awesome. Huge city now, obviously. The city goes from 5,000 people before gold to grows over 5 times in size in 2 years. So 5,000 to 25,000 people. And there's no gold in San Francisco. It's inland, in the mountains. So these are all people that are just going to San Francisco to profit off of the gold rush. Hotels, businesses, banks, etc. Now who migrates? Who would leave to go find gold? Poor people. People on the frontier, people in cities, industrial workers. This is important. So if you're rich in New York, are you leaving your business to go find gold? No, because what if you don't find any? You left your business. Good work. So we see people from the East Coast, industrial workers, coming to California trying to get rich. Asians, Chinese immigrants, a lot of Chinese immigrants, Irish immigrants, German immigrants, free black people. A ton of people are going to get rich in California off the gold. Unfortunately for many of them, there's not that much gold. But hey, at least you're in California now. Beats the shit out of Iowa. We see, for example, California Direct, extraordinary inducements. 35 days to get there. 35-day trip to go try to find some. Imagine you took a trip 35 days to get somewhere. And you get there and they're like, oh, sorry, the gold's all gone. I'll get to that point. It's not that funny. Why? 35 days is actually pretty quick. To get all the way from the East Coast, what happens? They take a steamship. Thanks, Market Revolution. The world has shrunk. They can take a steamship all the way down to Central America to Nicaragua. They get off the boat. They take a jackass, like riding Luis Bernal across the Nicaragua. They take a donkey. They ride that donkey right across Nicaragua, and they get on another steamship up to San Francisco. 35 days, $90.
That's not.
Well, that kind of expensive. $90. You better hope you paid $90 and you left your entire life, you find some gold. Who gets the richest off of the gold rush? The first one's there, yes. Anybody other guesses?
The closest one.
The jackass one.
The jackass owners?
Oh, the ones that want to see.
The people who get the richest? Good.
I was gonna say the people who get their riches, who like the people who like own the miners or like the miners.
Kind of.
I got you.
What you got?
I read the book and I remember it's like the people who went there, like some made food, clothes.
Yeah.
Those are the richest.
The people that get the guy that gets the richest is Levi. Levi's jeans?
Oh.
Yeah.
Levi's strong.
Comes from the gold rush?
Yeah. Levi's jeans comes from the Bay Area. To this day, their headquarters is in the Bay Area. The guy making jeans for all the miners is the guy that gets the absolute richest. Levi's jeans to this day is a heavy force in the denim world. Speaking for my wife, also works in denim, so I understand it to a small extent. Today, what's the football team in San Francisco called? 49ers. The year that everybody rushes to San Francisco for gold? 1849. Oh, bonus question. Where do the 49ers play? Levi Stadium. Yeah. Levi Stadium. It's not San Francisco at all. So the people that get the richest off of the gold rush are people like Mr. Levi, who supplies them all with jeans. So go figure. You should be proud. So all these people come: Mexican Americans, European Americans, Chinese Americans, women, African Americans, Native Americans. So many people come to California for the gold rush that California becomes A, instantly heavily populated, a lot of people, and B, very diverse. Why is California today the most diverse state in the country? It was the most diverse state in the country from the 5th day it was a state, probably. Because who migrates? The poor, the underserved, the underprivileged. International migrants. So California is very, very, very diverse from the get-go. Population increases exponentially. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of gold. So a lot of people are very disappointed. It is said that the San Francisco Harbor, you guys have seen it, the water?
Yeah.
It's huge. It is said that for 5 years, the harbor looks like a boat graveyard. Everybody just pulls up in their boat, leaves it, and I gotta go, I gotta find the gold. People just are, there's abandoned boats everywhere. It looks like it's a parking lot of boats. Because nobody has any intention of going back where they came from. They all came to California for a new life, to get gold, to strike it rich, and to live the American dream. So California is unique in that they don't have to sit very long as a territory. Usually it goes like land becomes organized territory, territory becomes a state. They applied directly to become a state. Why? Because they can, because they have enough people. Because their population grows so fast, they have enough people to become a state. Now, is there a lot of slave owners in California? No, because slave owners in general aren't going to uproot all their slaves to go try to find, it doesn't work that way. So most of the people in California are people that are more of this free soil ideology. So in 1850, they applied to be a state very quickly. Obviously, the first new state out of all this land we acquired from Mexico. It's the first real test subject for what's going to happen with the new land from Mexico. And they're going to apply to be a free state. Which, logically speaking, makes sense. There's not a lot of slave power in California. Let's look at the map over here. Where's the nearest slave state to California at this point? Texas. So that's 4. Is Texas even heavily populated yet?
No.
Let's check the map. How many electoral college votes do they have? 4. For that giant state, they only have 4 electoral college votes. Not a lot of people. Right? Louisiana's got 6. Bama's got 6. Mississippi. Yeah. Georgia 10. South Carolina 9. North Carolina. So they have, you can equip this, they have about 1/3 the people of North Carolina in a way bigger space. So there's not really a whole lot, we haven't even really settled Texas for slavery yet, in terms of like real settlement. So there's no logical place for slavery to spread to California. So California applies as a free state. And the South loses their mind. The South loses their you-know-what. Because they realize if we start adding all these new free states over here, there's no way slave power can keep up in the Senate. This important piece of balance that we've been trying so hard to maintain. Maine, Missouri. Balance. Right? Louisiana, Illinois. Balance. Arkansas, Wisconsin, Iowa, ballots. Check one for their box, check one for our box. The South looks at the map and realizes, well, we don't really have anywhere else to spread, but more importantly, we don't have enough people to spread it. You guys with me?
Yeah.
So the problem becomes like, okay, the South's looking at this from an analytical standpoint. All right, California, they're going to be state, free state. You know who's going to be next? Oregon, free state. You know who's going to be next? Up here, Minnesota, free state. So they're realizing that if we don't put our foot down now, we're going to be really outnumbered. It's going to be quick. Yes?
Wasn't this like the reason why the South lived outside of the U.S. is like?
We'll get there. We'll get there. Because the South is realizing we don't have, because could the South spread somewhere else? Maybe. But the problem becomes like Texas doesn't give up any airspace. Texas should be like 4 states. But Texas is Texas. We're our own country. Yeah, not very successfully, but sure. Wow, that's Texans. So the South's looking at this realizing like this is not good. Northerners take this as an opportunity to really begin actively demanding the prohibition of slavery, not in the country, but in these new territories. This free soil ideology is very, very important. And this is really the first time we start seeing Southerners discuss openly this issue of secession. What's the other time in American history where secession is kind of whispered a little bit?
Oh, when Jackson.
Yes?
He put a tariff and then Carolina.
What's the crisis called?
Yeah.
Nullification. And nullification, who was mad? Not just the South. South Carolina. You guys with me so far?
Yeah.
I know it's Monday. Come on. So in the nullification crisis, Calhoun's pissed. South Carolina's pissed. Right? South Carolina's like, we're not backing down. And Jackson's like, cool, I'm going to go hang you from a tree. And South Carolina's like, we're all together, right? The rest of the South's like, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you kind of on your own there, John. Like, we support you and all, but we're going to support you from over here. Alabama's like, we're a little busy. I'm busy that day. All right. North Carolina's like, that's our weird cousin. South Carolina, we don't really talk to that about that cousin. So, in that case, like, secession gets discussed, but really only with Calhoun and South Carolina. And then they back down and everybody's happy. So this 1850 is the first real time where we see open discussion of like, if we don't get our way, we're out. We're leaving, we're bouncing, we're taking our ball and going home. Things are getting quite tense. Now why, I ask you? Why is California in an especially tense political crisis? What makes this issue different than, say, the Missouri Compromise? Different than, say, South Carolina and nullification? What makes this different? And the big difference is the map. The what comes next. The realization in the South that this is just one domino of many. And the context. The fact that we're discussing California in a time in which for the previous 15 years, abolitionism has increased. Exposure to slavery has increased. What has the South been doing with slavery in the last 15 years? How have they been portraying it? Yeah, this positive good, this defense of slavery, this Christianizing of slaves, this modernizing of Africans. That's only happening because slavery's been under attack. So what makes this different is for the first time in 1850 we have this new party, the Free Soil Party. That makes things a little tenser. We have these abolition movements. That makes things a little tenser. We have Frederick Douglass and William Lloyd Garrison advocating openly for the ending of slavery. That makes things a little tenser. So because tensions are already higher regarding slavery, and because there's no easy compromise, there's no easy balance. Oh, we'll give you California, and we'll just add Oklahoma as a slave state. Well, you can't do that. The Indians are there. There's no slavery there. So because there's no easy path out of this crisis, and tensions are already high, California becomes this flashpoint of controversy that creates this atmosphere in which civil war is possible. We're going to compromise our way out of it, but this compromise is only going to last 10 years. How long did the Missouri Compromise last us? 30. Because it got us to this point, 1820 to 1850. So there's a reason that The 3/5 and the Slave Trade Compromise, that lasts for a long time. And then the Missouri Compromise lasts for a little bit of a shorter time. The Compromise of 1850 only lasts 10 years, and then Civil War 10 years later. Bless you. So this is the issue. We have a crisis point. The Senate is trying desperately to hold things together. Trying desperately, but it's a mess. It's a mess. California wants to be a state. They want to be a free state because the people in California don't like slavery. Texas is a problem. Go back to this map. Is this the border of Texas today?
No.
Eyes up. Is this the border of Texas? Does Texas look like this?
No.
No. So Texas is over here wildly claiming land that's not theirs. Texas is like, we got that land, we got that land, this is our land. Isn't that how we started the Mexican War in the first place? Texas claiming more land than they... Go figure. So there's that issue. There's the California issue, the Texas issue. There's this growing abolition movement who's arguing, hey, isn't it unfortunate that we have this beautiful government, this nice White House, this nice Senate, Congress building, and in the shadow of all these beautiful American iconic buildings, we're selling humans? We have foreign visitors that are coming to see America, and they're coming to visit the White House to see the president, and they're seeing slave auctions right outside. And the South is still super salty that the North has been forever refusing to enforce what's then called the Fugitive Slave Act. This act is passed in 1793. Let me ask you guys a question. Let's use a little bit of business logic here. Brett, you're a Southerner. Brett's Southerner from Alabama. And Brett loses his donkey. A jackass is jackass. It gets away. Brett's donkey gets away. And it goes down the street, and his neighbor finds it. What should his neighbor do with the donkey? Return it. It's Brett's property. You guys with me? Makes sense, right? Donkeys, of course, are the key vehicle, the official state vehicle of Alabama to this day. It's wild. So Brett loses his donkey. Brett gets his donkey back. So far, so good? So the South is saying, how come, I thought we were all in the same country, how come when our slaves escape and they make it to the North, they don't get returned to us? Now, I'm not comparing humans to donkeys, but I'm comparing the treatment of property to property. The country has decided that slaves are property. So how come in one example I get my property back, and in the other example you think it's right to just ignore this law? Isn't that just nullification? If the North can just ignore the Fugitive Slave Act because they don't like it, how are they, I'm speaking, any different than, for example, South Carolina saying we're not going to pay this tariff because we don't like it? Now, we're going to use our 2018 emotions and say, well, they were right because slavery is wrong. Sure, I agree with you. Slavery is wrong, and the North was right to ignore the law. However, from a legal and political standpoint, does the South have a legal argument? Yeah, absolutely. D. So, we have this crisis. California wants in as a free state, and there's no easy solution to add anything on the other side of the balance. Turn your page. Now, upon California's application. Excellent, I'm sorry. Upon California's application as a free state, of course, we're going to debate this in the Senate. John Calhoun is going to give like a 17-page speech, a very aggressive, impassioned speech against California's admission as a free state. Now, I've chunked it down for you. Just a couple. I didn't think you guys wanted to read 17 pages of Calhoun today. We don't need 17 pages to know he's an idiot. So he gives a 17-page speech, basically that says, like, if we allow California in, we're out. We in the South are leaving the Union. But he poses some solutions as well. Of course, in rebuttal to his 17-page speech, Daniel Webster, Whig from Massachusetts, gives a 17-page rebuttal. Well, these people can talk. I guess I have a lot of words. 1800s senators got wordy ass dude. So, Reed Calhoun, he's going to place the blame very specifically on some specific groups for why the country is about to fall apart, and he's going to offer you 2 or 3 solutions. So I'm going to give you 6 minutes to just read and answer how does he place the blame for the tension on the North, say it's the North's fault there's problems, and then what are his solutions. 6 minutes? Go for it. It's a good piece of text. I think you guys will be enlightened by it. About 2 or so minutes left. Get into Calhoun's text. How does he blame the North? What are his solutions? Inspiring man. Just think I miss you the first. How? 40 seconds.
It's a couple more though. There's other solutions.
The only question, there's only two.
What's the rest?
Somebody's out, I get back. 20 seconds. Stop. All right, so take a minute and talk about it with your partner. What is Calhoun getting at? How does Calhoun assess the nation's state in 1850? What are his observations that he makes, and how is he going to fix the problems? 1 minute, chat it out, go. Go, 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 go. Go. All right. So what does he have to say about society in 1850? Actually, go ahead. What does Calhoun offer us about society? What is his view about American society at this point? Chavez, help her out.
He's painting the South as the victim.
Ah, beautifully put. He's painting the South as the victim. Poor us. Oh my God. The North is just coming for our way of life. Pity us. The poor, helpless, disheveled, crumbling South. So hard to be us. What is he upset with the North for? Keep going.
Well, right here it says she has, well, he's referring to the South. She has already surrendered so much. She has really left to surrender.
Oh yeah, it's been so much. We've already surrendered so much. God forbid. We've given so much to the country, and all we're asking is just our slaves. And just the expansion of slavery forever. I don't really see what the big deal is. He talks about the laws that benefit the North, the policies that benefit the North, the fact that the North is pursuing this agitation against slavery. What does it mean by agitation?
Abolition.
Yeah, abolitionism. Good. Good job, Slayer. That's all these Northerners who are over here stirring up trouble, trying to make slavery look bad, trying to make the South look bad. I don't know, South. What can we do to solve some of these problems? I don't know, industrialize? Advance your economy past a 1650 perspective? Do something other than pick a cash crop and ride your freaking donkeys around? Donkeys, the official vehicle of Alabama.
Oh, really?
No. License plates and all. So, he paints the South as a victim. Santos, what else does he portray about society in 1850? Another important perspective that he holds.
How peaceful it is.
Yeah, the South's not the one causing trouble. That's y'all. Bring in your problem, because this is important for later. The South's going to say the same thing about the civil rights movement. It's those northern agitators, those northern race mixers coming to the South to stir up trouble here. We have no problem with black and white relations. They just, have their own different spheres of society. So this is going to be a common defense of the South. Leave us alone. States' rights. Let us, as Southern states, regulate our own thing. Interesting. So he has 3 solutions that he proposes. 3 of them. Ruby, what is one? What's one way you can solve this problem?
Set conceding to the South an equal right in the acquired territory.
Beautiful! Give us an equal right to the territory. Let us spread our slavery out there. That's important. Kelly, what's another proposal? Sure, so what does he want us to do as a society? Yeah, send the escaped slaves back, yes.
Did you guys say an amendment yet?
No, that's the 3rd one. Go ahead, Gustav.
Yeah, basically, I think it was saying where, they were talking about that there should be an amendment, for the slaves in the South, that if they're lost or something, they should be returned.
Not only should we pass a law, we should pass a constitutional amendment keeping slavery safe. Yes?
Was this when they were getting free blacks and they were taking them back?
I'll get that. That's part of this comment. So yeah, good job. So there's go ahead.
Just don't accept California as a free state?
Yeah, and then big picture, he wants no part of California as a free state. No part. Unless you're going to give us a constitutional amendment that allows the safekeeping of slavery forever. It's really hard to pass an amendment. Can the South pass an amendment by themselves?
No.
Can the North pass it by themselves?
No.
No, you need 2/3 of states. So he's saying, we're willing, it's those guys who aren't going to work with us to keep slavery safe. They're the ones not following the laws about fugitive slaves. They're the ones imposing their agitation here on our way of life. Oh, poor South.
Poor me.
It's so hard to just sit here on my ass and own people. Literally on my ass and the donkey. So Henry Clay proposes a solution. Henry Clay, the great compromiser. He saved us from the Missouri crisis. He saved us from the nullification crisis. And yes, Brett, I told you this when I first introduced him. Henry Clay never dies. Until 1852, he'll be dead by then. So, Henry Clay is literally on death's doorstep. Henry Clay is on the actual verge of death. And he's like, don't worry, America, I got you one last time. I think for the rest of class, you should just not say anything. That's what I think. So, Clay proposes a bill in the Senate, which says a couple things. And I'll get to the actual stipulations in a minute. But he's like, hey, look, guys, California's going to want to be a free state. They have enough people. We can't force slavery somewhere where slavery isn't welcome. California's a free state. But what we'll do for the rest of the territory, we'll make sure this idea called popular sovereignty holds. You with me so far? Very important for Period 5 is this term of popular sovereignty. What does popular mean? Yeah, the people. What is sovereignty?
To make decisions.
Sovereignty is power, political power. So whoever goes there, they can decide if we're going to have slavery or not. And what this does is it allows the federal government to say, not our problem. We left it up to the people, and the people decided. So now people can stop getting mad at the federal government. They're again finding a way to ignore the problem. Popular sovereignty. The third thing he asks, hey, you know what? We can compromise on slavery. Why don't we get rid of the slave trade in Washington, D.C., but not slavery itself? And fourth, to make the Calhouns of the world happy, we'll make sure that this new fugitive slave law is actually enforced. That people do send escaped slaves back to the South. So Clay makes this proposal, and I'm going to give you, let's talk about it. It comes through with 5 final aspects, each of which are on your notes. All I want in the side of your notes is who wins and why. Who wins and why. So first, most important piece, California is in as a free state. Eliam, who wins and why? The North wins, why?
Allows California to not. Oh, it just limits the expansion of slavery for the South, so they have more representation.
And it adds representatives in the House of Representatives and the Senate that are from a non-slaveholding state. Cool. Now the second piece is popular sovereignty. Here and here. It takes the rest of this land that we got from Mexico and it leaves it open to slavery or closed to slavery based on what the people there want. Now, you guys probably don't know much about what now today is modern day New Mexico and Arizona. Not great for farming. It's the freaking desert. It's only good if you're, I don't know, catching scorpions, looking for rattlesnakes, you know, enjoying some sand. Miss Dagnino, you're from Arizona.
I am.
She is from Tucson, where I went to college. Best city in America.
We also went to the same college.
We did, the same college. We did. Uh-huh. Yeah, we did. Yeah. Are you that excited about it? Wait, so is there more? Is there a better follow-up question?
It's crazy to believe, that's why.
It's crazy, I know. That somebody as qualified as her and I went to the same school. So, Arizona, a great place for large-scale crop farming, or maybe not so much?
Ooh, I don't know. I don't think so. Not at all. No.
Why not?
It is hotter than the oven. Have you ever stood in front of the exhaust pipe of a car?
Yeah.
Nope.
When a car's running, you walk behind it, you feel that hot. Yeah.
That's what the air
Yeah,
feels
when those
like.
first flashes. I've never seen you run. That's wild.
Yeah, that's what the air feels like in Arizona.
Yeah,
Well, in southern Arizona.
Yes, and how's the soil?
Ooh,
Is there soil, or is it more of
I
a...
think it's like a sandy dirt.
Imagine going to the beach with no ocean.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Yeah.
exactly what it is.
So, that is prevalent for much... Thank you for your geography
Of
lesson.
course.
You walked by at the right time.
Hey, go Wildcats.
Bear down. So, ¿qué pasó?
¿Qué pasó? Crystal, going home.
Does that fool ever stay here for a full day, or is this more of a...
It's routine.
He has a doctor's appointment.
Cool.
Perfect.
So, hear me out. Is this area open to slavery now? Yes. Is slavery likely to spread there? No. Except for, not for economic reasons, no. For political reasons, sure. Now, let me ask you this. So, we'll do this map. This is open to slavery via popular sovereignty and popular sovereignty. The people there, whoever settles there, they can decide. It's not the federal government's decision. Thanks, sir. Good work. Swing by tomorrow. Can slavery spread here? No. Ruby, why not? There's a very compromise. So slavery cannot spread there. So now we have a situation in which we have some options for slavery, but really not much. The map is important, I promise.
So basically, the North wins.
The North wins popular sovereignty, kind of, but who really wins is the fact the federal government can say it's not a problem. Third issue, the fugitive slave law is really strengthened and enforceable. To the fact that now we have escaped slaves being captured by bounty hunters. The South is sending people into the North to find escaped slaves to bring them back. There's this whole new business of going to hunt for escaped slaves and bring them back to the South. So the South definitely wins part 3. Now the fourth, Texas is made to give up all this extra land they think is theirs. Says, Texas, calm down, cool it. You're not special. You're not your own country anymore. You can't just do whatever you want. Texas gives up a good chunk of land, and they settle their debt disputes. They owe a bunch of money. The federal government takes that debt away in exchange for them giving some of their land away. Who wins that? It doesn't really matter. It's just part of the compromise. And the fifth piece is that slavery itself is still allowed in Washington, D.C. It's still legal, but the slave trade, the buying and selling of humans, is outlawed. So in that case, it's more of a compromise win. Union wins. The fact that both sides. So something we haven't really discussed is, where's Washington, D.C.? Between what 2 states? You guys know? Virginia and Maryland. Both of which are, if we go back to the map, both of which are yellow. What does that mean?
They're slaves.
Yeah. So we don't really talk much about the fact that our capital is between 2 states that are both slaveholding states. Only reason the capital moved to the south in the first place is that Hamilton really wanted his bank. So he traded the votes for the bank to move the capital south. So, so that's our situation. Those are the 5 issues. I would say the biggest win for the North. What do you guys think is the biggest win for the North? California. What's the biggest win for the South? Usually that. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And Calhoun's still heated. I trust that we shall persist in our resistance until the restoration of all of our rights. Give back all of our rights, or what's his option? Disunion, secession. One or the other is the consequence. We have borne the wrongs and insults of the North long enough.
What's his problem?
What's his problem?
Like the fugitive slave law came forward. They took a bill with it.
They did. Not enough does. So there's a good cartoon. I want you with your partner to take 2 minutes identifying at least, you give me the context, H, historical context, and you can pick one of the other 3. What is the audience or purpose or point of view of this cartoon? That's on the board and it is on your notes. 2 minutes, go. What you got? What you got? 2 minutes. The things I would ask you to focus on are this, maybe. What did you say?
Pretty sure it's
What are you doing? What do you think it was at? What do you think? Who could that possibly be? Who is this? Who's the one trying to create balance and compromise? That helps. That helps. Good. Good.
Who is really important?
What? Who's the guy on top? Who do you think? Who could it possibly be? Yeah, it's Clay. It has to be Clay. It can't be. Calhoun's on very firmly one side of the scale. Calhoun's not trying to find a middle ground.
Oh, you're right.
Who's the only one really trying to strive for balance? Who's the one trying to compromise? See, you guys are getting better at this. Oh yeah. It's just important that you know it's there. 7 seconds.
Historical context.
How could that possibly be Calhoun?
Oh, is this Jackson?
So
it's Washington.
a lot of you guys are overthinking this. Who's the only person in the scenario that we've discussed that's striving for balance? Yeah, Clay, the great compromiser. You're the one who just said it. So what is he balancing?
The union.
What are the 2 things he's trying to balance?
The North and South.
Sure, so this one says the Wilmot Proviso from Thursday of not allowing any slavery in the new territories. This free soil ideology from David Wilmot. And this side he's saying he's got Southern rights. So he's trying to find a way to balance this desire by some to not allow any slavery in the new territory with the other side of things in the Southern, in their mind, right to spread out slavery. Sure. And down here is the president, Zachary Taylor. As you can see, who's making this decision? It's in the title of your cartoon. Congress. It's a congressional decision. So they finally come up with this compromise, the Compromise of 1850. And Zachary Taylor is the president, and he refuses to sign it. No, I don't like that compromise. Now, Taylor, as we know, is a war hero. He believes in states' rights. He's a Southerner. He's a slave owner. He believes in states' rights, but does not believe that states can secede. Like Jackson. You can be a states' rights supporter and not believe as far as nullification or secession.
After he
And he doesn't like expanding slavery. He believes in letting slavery just stay where it is. This Whig point of view. Unfortunately for him, he takes the presidency in 1848, as you saw on that election map from the beginning class today, and then he's dead a year later. Why do they die so fast? Because we keep electing losers. So after him comes his vice president, my man's Millard Fillmore. Now raise your hand and be honest, you ever heard of Millard Fillmore before A. Bush?
I've heard.
Oh wait, no.
Not an English. No.
You in a book. You read a book about Millard Fillmore.
No. Millard's president is like when I was little. I used to read about.
Good. I'm glad. So Millard Fillmore, beautiful man, obviously. The Compromise of 1850 is a real chance of never getting off the ground until, thank God, Zachary Taylor dies. So Taylor's gone. Fillmore takes over. Fillmore's happy to sign the compromise because Taylor is a very moderate, middle ground, not going to piss off either side type of dude. He's anti-slavery, but he acknowledges that it exists where it exists, so he's good to go. Now, we don't even know anything about Fillmore's presidency, I promise, except that he signs the Compromise of 1850. But at the end of his presidency, he's going to send Commodore Matthew Perry, this explorer-type guy, to Japan. It's very famous, Perry's expedition to Japan. And it's not really important for today's conversation. But what I'm showing you is what I started building on Thursday. That as soon as we've conquered all the land in the North American continent, what do we start doing? Looking elsewhere for economic investment, for economic opportunities, for economic influence. So we send Commodore Perry to Japan to try to start some economic relations with overseas countries. Really this root of imperialism. So it's important that we understand that there's a direct correlation between the Mexican-American War and this man has destiny idea. Well, destiny acquired, we're done, we got the whole continent, and then spreading out elsewhere to Asian and other countries. Yes, sir?
Is that where we get the country Alaska?
We'll get there in our first day of period 7.
Period 7?
Yeah.
How about
Hawaii, same thing.
Oh.
No, we got it long before that. But we'll get there.
How about
So,
how about the
but we have the territory from imperialism. So yeah, all those things are going to be related, but they all really start as soon, if you talk about like the thought process, beginning as soon as Manifest Destiny is complete.
This is period 4, right?
What? This is 5.
Oh.
Look at your notes. So, big picture, this great triumvirate who for the last 30 years have controlled Congress and always put the Union first, Clay, Webster, to a smaller extent Calhoun. These guys, who did Clay represent? What region? Yeah, the West. Webster represented the North, Calhoun the South. All three of them, they wanted what was best for their region, but who they always put first? Yeah, Union. So there's this whole generation of congressional leaders that managed to keep the country together. Their last hurrah, the last thing they really accomplished is the Compromise of 1850. And it works. Keeps the country together. By 1852, there is no more. Clay's dead. Webster's still around, but not by much. Calhoun's dead. And this new generation flips the script. They put Union second, and their own region, their own state, or their own personal ambitions first. Could Clay have been president? Absolutely. One of the reasons he's not president is all the compromises. Him putting himself out there on both sides of an issue to make sure that both sides get what they want makes him as an individual look less credible. So Clay, in a sense, loses his chance to be president by putting the country first. This new generation isn't going to be like that. They're going to always put their personal ambitions first, the country second, which is why by 1860 we have a civil war. Yes, sir?
This is for the question, right?
Yeah. So these new politicians are men like William Seward. He's a Whig who will soon be a Republican once that party becomes a party. People like Stephen Douglas, who I argue more than anybody else in the North at least is responsible for getting us towards civil war. And people like Jefferson Davis, who's a Southern Democrat representing Mississippi, who will actually be the first and only president of the Confederate States of America.
Wannabe.
They're both president at the same time. Which we'll get to next week.
He's the first Confederate president?
First and only Confederate president. So it's important that we understand that I talked to you guys last week about how when the parties still have a national base, when there's still Southern and Northern Democrats, Southern and Northern Whigs, it kind of keeps the country glued together. But once we see that this old generation of politicians who really put union first, they start to die off, the parties start to become more regional. And that leads us very quickly towards civil war. You have this time period in which the country has its most tension ever about slavery, and people are making decisions selfishly, not for general good. I'll show you the best example of that in a minute. So the biggest, most inflammatory, most controversial, most troublesome aspect of the entire compromise of 1850 is not California. We get over that quite quickly. It's not popular sovereignty. It's not Texas's border. The thing that causes the most trouble and tension is the Fugitive Slave Act. Who's ever seen the movie 12 Years a Slave? It's a fantastic movie. I'd show you in class, but it's not quite class appropriate, nor do we have time. Maybe we'll watch it after the AP test. And it goes into the life of a man, a real true story, named Solomon Northup. He's a man who was born free in the North. He's a free black person. He is kidnapped by a slave catcher, a bounty hunter, and sent back down the river into the South into slavery. Why? Because he's black. So what the Fugitive Slave Act does is enforces the capturing and returning of escaped slaves. From a property rights standpoint, does this make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. If somebody steals your car and the police find your car, what are they going to do with your car? Give it back to you.
This isn't your car.
This isn't your car. This is Alabama. Official car of Alabama is a donkey. So, slaves, because of the Fugitive Slave Act, can no longer simply escape to just the North. They need to go all the way to Canada to actually be free. But what happens is there any way to document whose slave is who?
No.
Is there like photo ID, social security cards? No. So what happens is we have this whole new business of bounty hunters, where it's like, you need to go find my escaped slave and I'll pay you $300 to do it. Their name is blank, they're about this tall, go. And these bounty hunters are like, well, I'm going to get paid if I bring back a slave. So what happens in northern communities is people are being kidnapped, stolen. Some are, in fact, escaped slaves, but some aren't. And all this does, this in a sense is going to actually backfire on the South. Because all this is going to do is it's going to increase abolitionism in the North. Because they're going to be awoken to what's actually happening in the South by this simple act of having people just kidnapped off of their streets, taken out of their businesses, taken out of their homes, and sent back to the South. Now, how can a slave defend themselves? They can't. They can try to go to court, but they are denied the right of trial by jury. Their only recourse is this special Fugitive Slave Commission. But this commission gets paid $5 if they side in favor of the slave, or freed slave, or escaped slave, or African American. They get paid $10 if they side in favor of the slaveholder. So if the freed slave or escaped slave wants to go to court, all they have to do, they show up for court, and the slave owner has to show up and say, yeah, that's my slave. Done. So for the freed or escaped slaves, or even the non-slaves born free, there's no real options. What this creates, though, is more tension. The South's mad at the North. You're not enforcing the law. You told us we couldn't nullify laws. Why are you nullifying laws now? The North's mad at the South. Who are you to come into our communities and steal people that live here? It just creates more tension. It increases abolitionism. Here's an example. Caution. These posters are put everywhere in the North. Specifically, here's Boston. Caution, be warned, colored people of Boston. You are cautioned to avoid conversing with the police officers. Don't talk to the police. Because due to recent orders, they are empowered to act as kidnappers and slave catchers. Keep a sharp lookout, don't talk to the cops. Because they might kidnap you and send you back to the South. Or send you to the South for the first time.
So you could just not say anything and nothing will happen?
It's just a warning. But here's a Southern example. Proclamation, Goodville, Massachusetts. Be it known that there are now 3 slave hunters in Boston looking for their prey. One is called Davis, the other is called Edward. Don't talk to them. So here we see, for example, Massachusetts coming together to ostracize or keep away the influence of the slave catchers. Good job, Massachusetts. On the southern side, hey, $100 reward. Go find my black woman named Emily. She's 17, she's well grown, she has black color, and a whining voice. Oh, just let her go, bro. She got a whining voice. And it describes the dress that she ran away with. And, you know, if she's on the other side, if you have to go into the north, into Ohio to get her, the reward goes from $100 to $300. So, moral of the story, this Fugitive Slave Act really starts dividing society further. What else divides society is the Underground Railroad. Sure. Luis, this is not, in fact, trains running below the ground. I just wanted to clarify.
It's kind of similar to it because they help.
Are you talking about games in class?
Yeah.
Don't do that ever again. So, the Underground Railroad in general is this approach by, for the most part, former escaped slaves. Former escaped slaves that know how they escaped and are able to go back, risk their lives to go back and rescue more current slaves. Obviously, the most famous of which is Harriet Tubman. But it really sets up this network of houses, trails, hiding places along this route, largely north, largely along rivers. Most prominent example is the Mississippi River and the Ohio River, to get escaped slaves out. Now, the numbers that actually escape in the Underground Railroad are relatively minimal. It doesn't put a huge chunk of slaves into freedom, but what it does do is it begins to crumble the hopelessness of slavery. If you're a slave and you're hopeless, you do whatever you're told. But if you're a slave with a little bit of hope that you might escape someday, you stop really looking at your master with that same exact type of fear. So what it starts to do is it starts to shake the foundation of slavery, which is really built on a system of fear and hopelessness. Some white families that are living in the South that are anti-slavery, that are very sympathetic towards the slaves, also help as well. But really, it functions as like a pseudo underground society of symbolism and ways to get freed slaves out. Some slaves, specifically in Texas, flee to Mexico. Same idea. It all counts as this Underground Railroad idea. But it does start to even more so increase tension. Because the South's like, look, North, we have this new future slave act and our slaves are still escaping to the North. You must be helping. Now the final thing, not final, but the last part of today that really increases sexual tension is Uncle Tom's Cabin. Uncle Tom's Cabin is a fantastic book. And it's written by a woman named Harriet Beecher Stowe. Now this is just the next in a long line of books in American history that make a huge impact on societal change. Here's another example of other books in American history that make a huge impact. Common Sense. Common Sense is a great example of using literature, using the written word to inspire change. Frederick Douglass' autobiography. Absolutely. So what she's trying to do, she's going to write something that would make the whole nation feel what an accursed thing slavery is. And let me tell you what Uncle Tom's Cabin does. Who's ever read a book before and got really emotionally involved with the characters? Yeah, read. That's one of the best things about reading. Is really investing in what these people are going through. So what Uncle Tom's Cabin does is it forces readers in the North to reckon with what's actually happening for the experience of slavery. Separation of families, assault, violence, forced labor. So these northern, it's a really well-written book, these northern readers who can kind of ignore slavery, I'm not really an abolitionist, but you know, slavery's wrong, but it's over there, are now really invested in these characters in the book. It's not even a true story. It's historical fiction in a sense, but it really gets the reader invested in the experience of slavery in a way that we could not have done any other way as a society. So what this does is it increases abolitionism in the North. people are read this book and realize that slavery is not a system which there is no positive good defense of slavery. This is not a good system. It gets turned into a play for the idiots that can't read. And so even in play form, it's all over the North. And it really does fuel abolitionist guilt, abolitionist momentum. And now the 1850s, we can't ignore slavery anymore. You can't put a gag rule on society. You can put a gag rule on Congress. You can't gag rule society. So we see a huge increase because of things like this and the Fugitive Slave Act of abolitionism in the North. So now we're in a place in society in which things are tense, things are ugly. Nobody can avoid the issue of slavery, and in steps my good friend Stephen Douglas. I think Stephen Douglas is one of the dumber politicians in American history. I do. He's like 5'3". He's a little bitch. He wants to be president just as bad as Henry Clay wanted to be president. But, unlike Henry Clay, Stephen Douglas has no moral principles. Stephen Douglas, I'm going to show you why in a second, is going to gamble America's future to try to make his own political career more successful. And in the gamble, he's going to lose. So, Stephen Douglas, where's he from?
South.
No. Stephen Douglas from Illinois. And he is, who else from Illinois? We've already talked about. Lincoln's also from Illinois. Foreshadowing for your next chapter. So, Douglas, over to the map, if you guys can be so kind. Douglas is proposing a new transcontinental railroad. There's this new technology. It's not an underground technology, but it's important. Railroads are expanding greatly, and we finally now, thanks to the Mexican-American War, we have land on the West Coast, land on the East Coast. What's the best way to connect them? Railroad. Right? Somebody asked last class about that Nicaragua gold rush thing. There's no Panama Canal yet. There's no waterway east to west. So yeah, freeway, sure. So we're gonna have a railroad. Now I have Illinois circled. Is Illinois in the north or the south? It's definitely in the north. It's in the Northwest Territory, actually. So no slavery in Illinois. Douglas in Congress is going to propose a new transcontinental railroad. Where does he want the railroad to go through? What? Where does he want the railroad? What's going to benefit Stephen Douglas the most? Where should this railroad have its main center? Illinois. Because everything coming west has to go through Illinois. Everything coming east has to go through Illinois. You see my point so far? I'm not confusing anybody yet. So I know it sounds simple, but Douglas wants a railroad. He wants it to go through his state of Illinois, and he's willing to do anything he can to make that happen. He wants Chicago to be the next great American city. He wants Chicago to be like a New York, or a Boston, or a Philadelphia. Chicago does, in fact, become like a New York, or Boston, or a Philadelphia. And Douglas is willing to do anything he can to get his way for Illinois. Now, say the railroad goes just like I have drawn there on the map. Who does that piss off? The whole South. Because we cross the whole country for the railroad, and there's nothing happening in the South. So that I argue the South could, stop investing in donkeys and cotton plants and instead try a factory on the other side. The South's not going to do that. So Stephen Douglas knows that his railroad is going to be very unpopular to the South. What does he do? So let's take a second look at the map. We'll go back a couple if you guys don't mind. Here's the situation. Here's Illinois. Here's Chicago, right there in the tip of Lake Michigan. So Douglas wants that, Chicago, to be the center point of the railroad. Well, say we'll pick San Francisco because that's where more the people are in California at this point. Right there. And then we'll pick New York City. Let's say it's the other biggest city in America. New York City's right here. There we go. Who gets left out in this situation? The South, obviously. So Douglas looks at this and says, man, I really need Southern support for my railroad. What can I possibly do to make the South agree with my ideology that this railroad should go through my state? What does the South care most about at this point? Be deeper than that. Expansion of slavery. So Douglas says, I got it. We can take this big unorganized territory and we can split it into two. We'll call this Kansas. We'll call this Nebraska. Now, Eliam, at this point, can slavery spread to that territory? Why not? Be more specific. What compromise? The Missouri Compromise. This area is closed to slavery. We already talked about the year of Ruby. Since when is this area closed to slavery?
1820.
Since 1820. So for the next 34 years, who's been settling here? People that believe that there's no future for slavery in these territories. Why? Because the government said so. And what this is my point about this new generation of congressmen putting their own interests ahead of the country's interests. What Douglas says is, man, I really want this railroad. I'm going to screw the entire country over. We're not going to spread slavery here, but we're going to take a very Henry Clay-esque approach and say that we'll use popular sovereignty to decide slavery there and there. However, back to our map, is slavery likely to spread here?
No.
No, it's far from any slave power. It's not good for slavery. What about here? Look at Kansas. Not just great soil, what's it surrounded by? Look at the map. Yeah, we have Missouri, we have Arkansas, we have Texas. So what Douglas does is basically repeal or cancel or get rid of the Missouri Compromise. And open up territory that for 34 years was closed to slavery, opens it up to slavery just like that because he wants his railroad. And the South is like, hell yeah! We'll vote for your stupid ass railroad. We don't even like trains anyway. We ride on donkeys. We'll happily vote for your railroad because you just gave us a brand new place to spread slavery and counter what's happening elsewhere. See? I'm telling you, Stephen Douglas is just as responsible for speeding us towards civil war as anybody else. Little giant, mostly just little. So what he does, he splits this territory into Kansas and Nebraska. He says the railroad can go through Nebraska. The South would be very opposed to that. So he included a provision to let the new territories themselves use popular sovereignty. So this Clay-esque idea, I would argue popular sovereignty was a good idea for the Compromise 1850. It's a terrible idea for the Kansas-Nebraska Act. This ends the Missouri Compromise because both of these places are above the 3630 line. The South is thrilled because they don't care about the railroad anyway, and they have a new place to spread their slavery. And abolitionists are furious. Slavery is now allowed to grow, and this is going to cause a ton of conflict. Because all the people that are already living in this territory, do they have slaves? No, because for 34 years we've had a territory in which slavery wasn't allowed. So everybody that lives there is a non-slaveholder, and now is a bunch of slavery coming in. We'll talk about that on Wednesday. This, of course, is going to lead to a ton of violence, a ton of conflict. As you ask people that have had no slavery, now we have a ton of pro-slavery forces pouring in. So, like I said, popular sovereignty, the impact. Short term, Douglas wins. What does he win? His stupid railroad. He gets a little toy train to play with. He also gets Southern support. He really wants to be president. He knows he can't be president without Southern Democrat support. Now he's looked at as a hero in the South. Come 1860, he's going to be ready to run for the White House and take care of business. He's going to be the next great Democrat president. He's going to do what Clay wasn't able to do. What this does, though, is it virtually ends the Whig Party. Because a lot of the Whigs leave the Whig Party because the Whig Party hasn't been strong enough on slavery. The Whigs are going to split like this. Southern Whigs and what's called conscience Whigs, or Whigs with a conscience. These guys leave the Whig Party because the Whig Party has not made a stand on the spread of slavery. What they're going to do instead is they're going to, who are they going to team up with? These conscious Whigs. Who already exists that's kind of anti-spread of slavery?
Free soil.
Ah, they're going to add the Free Soil Party. Interesting. Interesting. They're going to add this other party called the Know Nothing Party. They're a little party. Their only real thing is that they're anti-immigrant. They're anti-Irish, anti-German immigrant. And they're going to add, jump over these other abolitionists, who of course also anti-spread of slavery, because they're anti-slavery at all. So therefore they're by logic anti-spread of slavery. And they're going to create the Republican Party. Interesting. Now can I just take you on a fun little history trip for a second?
Yeah.
A little nerd aside.
Yeah.
Why not, right? Why not? We have time. We're in great shape. Go ahead. So, we talked about in the era of Jackson, the creation of this modern Democratic Party. And I talked to you today, they appealed to the southern states' rights people and also the northern industrial workers and the immigrants. Who really was the architect of that policy for the Democrats? Who's the father of the modern Democratic Party? It's kind of Jackson because he's the president, but who's the guy behind all the strategy, the guy trying to appeal to the northern working class of New York and Pennsylvania? Who's the guy really driving this idea of campaigning to the common man? Van Buren. Good. So Van Buren is really that guy who really creates, behind the scenes, the modern Democratic Party. You guys with me so far?
Yeah.
So Van Buren, he serves as Jackson's vice president. He runs for president. He's elected president in 1836. Of course, he gets killed by the Panic, not killed, he's still around. He gets killed politically by the Panic of 1837. He doesn't win his re-election bid in 1840 because the Whigs run William Henry Harrison. They steal that Democratic play of running a common man, war hero. Of course, he dies in a month. That's neither here nor there. 1840, Van Buren ran for re-election and lost as a Democrat. By 1848, what did he run for president as?
Free soil.
Free Soil Party. So he left the Democratic Party over their issue of the expansion of slavery. Van Buren, as a Northern Democrat, leaves the Democratic Party. He doesn't like this willingness to just happily spread slavery at all costs. It really is partially the Mexican-American War that makes Van Buren leave. Now, Van Buren is in the Free Soil Party. Who does the Free Soil Party become? Louder. The Republican Party. So is it fair to say that Martin Van Buren, no, not at all, is the father of the modern Democratic Party? We already agreed on that. And the modern Republican Party.
Yes.
What? Fascinating. I know, I told you it was a little history nerd aside. But we could really give Martin Van Buren, of all people, right, Martin Van Ruin, we can give Van Buren a lot of credit for helping to create the two major parties that we've had in society since 1858. 1856, right? Isn't that wild? Sorry, you guys aren't as intrigued as me. But the same man in a 20-year span really helped start two political parties that last for the next 150 years. That's wild. Oh, and what's the thing that makes him leave the Democrats? Slavery. What's the thing that helps create the Republican Party? Slavery. Go figure. It's deep, huh? So this ends the two-party system. We don't have Democrats and Whigs anymore because the Whigs as the national party are gone. Our third two-party system will be Democrats and Republicans. Yes, sir.
Doesn't that make him a Democratic Republican?
Ha! There it is. It makes him a Democratic Republican. I like that. That was good. History nerd jokes are my favorite. That was pretty good. Maybe I enjoyed that more than anybody else did, but props to you. So that was pretty good. That was pretty good. That was good. He and Jefferson are Democratic Republicans. So let's look at the map, because maps will tell us our story. Utah Territory, open to slavery or closed altogether? Open. How? Popular sovereignty via the Compromise of 1850. New Mexico Territory, open or closed? That's not what I asked. Open or closed? Open, yeah. Popular sovereignty, 1850. Nebraska, open or closed? How? Popular sovereignty when? Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854. Kansas, Yeah, popular sovereignty, Kansas, Nebraska, 1854. So I don't know, Stephen Douglas, was it worth it? We'll find out in the next chapter. But, this is my point. What's around Kansas? Missouri, free or slave? Slave. Arkansas, free or slave? Texas, free or slave? So now Kansas is in for a rude awakening. As thousands of people who've been living there all this, it's not that many people, but it's still enough people that have been living there for all this time that never intended on living in a society based on slavery. So Kansas becomes the next, because we were never realistically going to spread slavery over to here anytime soon. What Stephen Douglas does is fast forward the Civil War 15, 20 years. Interesting. He's not smart. But why does he do it? For a stupid railroad. Thanks, Douglas. Yeah, he likes trains. That's like your DDQ last year. So, I have a quote for you. There's nowhere for you to answer this question. I just want us to think about this for a second. Because here comes Lincoln again. Lincoln. And he says, I'm going to read it to you, I'm going to let you think silently for a second what he's saying, because it's a really deep statement. And then I'll let you talk about it. So just stay quiet for the next 30 seconds after I read it, please. If Kansas should sink today and leave a great vacant space in the earth's surface, be nice, this vexed question of slavery would still be among us. Think about it for just 20, 30 seconds, and I'll let you talk about it. What is Lincoln getting at? What is he trying to say about society? All right, take a minute, chat about it. What's Lincoln's point? Why? Go for it. It's a deep line. Lincoln is a smart philosophical man.
Come on, gossip girl.
So, talk to me. Johnny,
Yes.
what is Lincoln getting at here?
What I said, I'm probably saying that if Kansas was to be like the slave state, the problem of slavery would still exist.
Okay. What if Kansas was a free state? What if Kansas just disappeared off the face of the earth?
Slavery would still exist.
And not just slavery. Sure. Kat, what do you think? Yeah.
I didn't really fully understand it, but I felt like, because you know how they have all these new states that are coming and stuff, and it's disrupting the balance between free and slave. If Kansas is like demolished, or in a sense, go either way, towards free or slave, hypothetically, then like it wouldn't really make a difference because all the other states are still undecisive about.
And society as a whole. Go for it.
Basically saying
Louder. So confident to speak. Make sure the whole room can hear your wisdom.
Lincoln is basically saying that if slavery is to take place in Kansas to today, or basically that time, there's no telling how much more slavery will be expanded.
Does Lincoln blame Kansas for the problem? What's the problem? Slavery. So Lincoln's like, yeah, we're all, and he knows what's going to happen is we're all going to fight. We're all going to fight about Kansas. But is Kansas the problem? No. Kansas is just the next place to have an argument. But the real issue is the root problem of the whole situation is the fact that slavery. So yeah, right now, Wednesday and Thursday, we'll talk about what's called Bleeding Kansas. when these slave forces basically invade Kansas. We have a mini civil war about Kansas. Sure, that's the problem this week. But once we settle Kansas, who's the next problem? Who knows? It doesn't matter. Slavery. Slavery is the problem. So what that leaves us with is, in my opinion, the best cartoon, ooh, I don't know, it's hard. A top 5 political cartoon in American history.
What's your favorite?
I don't know. We'll get there by the end of the year. We'll have a ranking.
Isn't it Jackson?
Now, Jackson's top 5, but it's not. I like this one better.
You just say everything's top 5.
I have not done that.
Yes, you have. Yes, you have.
I didn't even make up a top 5 ranking until the middle of junior corps. I haven't even seen 10
That's my
cartoons.
favorite cartoon.
This is a top 5 political cartoon in American history.
Oh, yes.
That's the
Which one?
Cecil Road.
Telegraphs of Africa.
Oh, yeah, I'm okay. It's not as good as
That was
this.
the best.
So take, yeah, that's a good one. Take 2 minutes with your partner. Just try to digest what this cartoon's trying to get across. Take 2 minutes. Go for it.
Oh, you get it, He said digest this cartoon here.
Oh, yeah.
So Kansas.
Wait, who's the big head?
Why?
Make sure you got tissue.
They trying to stop him.
2 minutes.
But these people are bad.
I don't know. Where are we forcing slavery?
Wait, who's saying this?
That's Abraham Lincoln. No, it's not. That is Abraham.
No, it's not.
He's not a free sovereign. Illinois. That's what
That's coming down. I hate that.
You wouldn't be cool with that?
Why? I want a picture of you on my wall. I want a picture of you.
Why don't you like that?
Why is your wild?
I don't know, like his family can be negatively impacted by slavery.
All right, that's your time.
There are people in the background. Let's go right there.
Hilda, what the hell's happening up here?
Basically, they're just trying to like.
Who's that? I don't like speaking in generalities.
South.
South? No, not yet. Not quite, but yes.
Well, it's basically like representing the expansion of slavery.
Okay. Okay, agreed. I'll come to you. Slaney, talk. I've heard your lovely voice today. What's happening?
Well, as a cartoonist saying, forcing slavery down before all those resources.
Okay.
What you're talking about is that, especially when you see the canvas right there.
Oh, okay. So let me stop you there. Where are these men standing? On the Democratic platform. This is a funny a play on words, because a political platform is what you stand for politically, but they're actually standing on a platform. And where are they shoving slavery right now? Who's he? Who is he?
No. Douglas.
Douglas is the one doing the shoving.
Oh, I see. No, it's good.
Stop.
No, let me tell you why.
No, we're good. Sling speaking. Talk to me. Who is he then? No. It's Kansas.
How's that Kansas?
Yeah.
Opinions approved?
That's Kansas. Because you're forcing slavery into Kansas. when Kansas didn't ask for slavery in the first place?
Because Kansas said.
Because, let me do my teaching. So first, who's doing the shoving then? Not just Douglas. The Democrats. This Democratic platform of popular sovereignty is first going to shove slavery down Kansas's throat. And then once they're done with Kansas, who's next? You're missing out on some valuable learning experiences. You want to bob your head like an idiot.
What does it say?
Cuba.
Yeah.
And after Cuba, Central America. So there's this argument that first they're going to force slavery into Kansas, and then when that's successful, they're going to look elsewhere. Oh, I don't know. Right before the Civil War, the South tries to pass the Ostend Manifesto, which attempts to annex Cuba as a slave state. This is a good cartoon that actually tells a good prediction of the future. Now, one of these two is yelling, "Murder, help, neighbors, help, my poor wife and children."
Oh,
Do you think that's the slave, or is that Kansas? I argue that's Kansas. It could be both, absolutely. But these people in Kansas are